Well, hello guys, and welcome back to another Rick and Morty review. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at Season 3, Episode 4, Vindicators 3, The Return of Worldender. Now, I said in the last video, Pickle Rick, that according to Dan Harmon in his podcast and a few other things here and there, this is the worst episode of Rick and Morty to date, right? That it's a disappointment, and he apologized and all that jazz. So my expectations were really low. And then the fact that I thought Rick Mancing the Stone was just okay, and that, well, Pickle Rick was mostly good, I just didn't like the ending. So my expectations were really low. And yet I really liked this episode. It's mostly just about comedy, nothing else in it is really that special or anything, but I thought the comedy was really funny. And I was laughing my ass off a lot in this one. And I wouldn't put it past me that my expectations were just so low that when the episode turned out to just be meh or meh, okay, whatever, that I actually liked it a lot more because of how low they were, that I was expecting something far worse. But no, I really liked this. Okay, let's just get into it. Starts off, they're dealing with these slugs that if they escape, they make the entire world sterile, whatever. It's a pointless plot point. You start off with two jokes, and I was like, oh, is it going to start strong and then disappoint me? And I thought that's where I was going for a second, but not exactly. But they get a call from the Vindicators to go on their big adventure, right? And this episode has two good callbacks. I like this one. Remember in, what was the one with Giant Court, Mr. Jellybean? I'm forgetting the episode's name. Where Morty gets to decide every 10th adventure. That gets a callback, and he's got a little punch card. That was really funny. Right? It's a nice callback like that I really like. So they go to the Vindicators headquarters, which is basically the Avengers, right? It's the Avengers combined with Justice League. They make some Suicide Squad references later. So it's just kind of... It's the show's take on the idea of superheroes, which I can see why people wouldn't like this, especially because in the Rick and Morty universe, everyone is an asshole, so having superheroes who are assholes isn't that great, because they're supposed to be superheroes, right? And yeah, well, Vince, who's a combination of Captain America and Iron Man, is clearly an asshole. I know people are getting sick of this whole Marvel, DC universes, new superhero movies every few months, right? I'm not. I'm still enjoying them, right? I'm still having a lot of fun, especially Wonder Woman. My God, that movie impressed me. It's not perfect, but... Okay, back on track. So, yeah, we get all the Vindicators, and we learn that this is Vindicators 3... Because Vindicators 2, which has this Doom villain who is clearly supposed to be their take on Ultron, but we'll get to that. But I like how they do this. I think this is well done, where right, because this is Vindicators 3, characters we're all supposed to know and have set up, but of course we don't know them, because we're starting in the third one. Which, yeah, it's their take. I mean, like, Worldender is literally their take on Thanos meets Darkseid. So, how they explain we learn what each of these characters are, and then Rick makes fun of them, right? It's a little contrived, a lot of exposition. I thought it was funny, and I thought it worked. So, I'm not going to complain, right? And then we get this Noop, I think it was Noop, who is the janitor who wants to be a Vindicator. On one hand, I feel like he's the Hawkeye of the group, but on the other hand, I feel like Morty's the Hawkeye of the group, but Morty feels more like a Robin than anything else, right? But Morty loves the Vindicators, right? They're his heroes, right? They're great adventurers. So he's all disappointed that they didn't go on to Vindicators 2 because they weren't called back because of personality conflicts. And this is one of the things I love that only great comedy can do, is I've talked about this plenty of times, where you get a set of jokes, right? When you watch it the first time through, you get a lot of jokes, right? You get some good laughs. But then when you watch it again, there's entirely new jokes that were there, but because you were laughing at other jokes, you didn't notice them the first time. Great comedy does this. I use the Hot Fuzz series. Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and At World's End are great examples of this, right? British humor does it a lot. But this episode also does this, especially this scene right here. The first time I was like, oh, those were some funny jokes. And then the second time around, there were new jokes that I didn't even notice the first time. Great. I'm always happy when it does this. And this show does that from time. This show is good at that. But Rick leaves, right? He goes and gets drunk. Morty's upset at him because, again, he's disappointed in Rick because we know, right? Remember in the season 1 premiere, Rick shouldn't be your hero. So now the Vindicators are his hero. And Rick's kind of upset at that. So he takes a shit on their conference room, whatever. It was funny. It's really good. Yes, is it stupid poo-poo humor? Yes. Did I laugh? Yes, because, if Sausage Party taught us anything, the more obvious the joke, the more it has to be addressed. And I thought it was funny, okay? I know poop humor, whatever, fuck it, who cares? I laughed. And then, right, Vince, who, again, is the asshole, leader-ish person of the group, and then Morty's line about, there is no good and bad, which is supposed to come back in later, but kind of does, kind of doesn't. And they go back to, they head down to this planet where Worldender is. And this is where the episode kind of starts to slow. And I was like, this is the moment. This is where the episode starts to fall apart. And I felt like it did, right? They break into his base. Rick gets over his hangover. They go in and they find out Vindicator has already been killed. Or Worldender, I mean. So I was like, yeah, this is where the episode's falling apart. It's getting slow, right? I'm not enjoying it anymore, right? It takes a dip, but then it recovered. Because they mentioned that, for Worldender to die, it must have been this greater evil. There must be some bigger evil out there. And yeah, it's Rick. What'd you expect? It's obvious. Like the second Morty said bigger evil, I knew exactly what it was going to be. And it was... And yeah, I think it's obvious, but I think it works. Because Rick got so drunk, right, he blacked out, and he did all of this while he was blackout drunk. And to play drunk Rick, Justin Roiland literally just took shots of tequila and was actually drunk, right? He did method acting. Again, I think this is part of the reason why they think it's the worst episode. Maybe part of it. I don't know if it's the whole thing. I thought he did a fine job, right? You can't... It's supposed to be Rick at his drunkest, and it does its job, right? Blackout drunk Rick. So, basically, he's doing the Saw thing, where unless they pass these puzzles, they'll all die. And it's... Okay, so, before Vince dies, who gives a shit, right? He's the Slipknot of this thing, he was born to die, right? And then Morty, so they all turn on Rick, and then Morty solves the puzzle, because the whole point of the puzzle was to prove that the Vindicators aren't special, that they're all the same, because it's like, tragic backstory, non-specific characters, right? All that jazz. And, okay, so I complained in Pickle Rick about them taking a jab at Rick, right? How I felt like it didn't work, right? And so now they do the same thing here where Morty's taking a jab at Rick, right? With this whole, with all these puzzles, right? And blackout drunk Rick. And this is how blackout drunk Rick works, right? He's taking jabs at Rick, which that seems to be a theme of this season. That Rick, even though he's winning, it doesn't feel like he won, right? He's still losing at the end of the day. And Morty, there's something about it that when some therapist totally destroyed Rick, right, by picking him apart, I didn't like it. But now that Morty, right, his closest companion is taking him apart, with some shit he's clearly done, right? This isn't the first time Rick's gotten blackout drunk. He knows how this works. He knows what's going to happen. And it just works a lot better. Morty does a better job at, well, it's not as defined as the therapist. It's better executed than the therapist was, in my opinion. Right, and then they go on to this next puzzle. The crocobot dies. Who gives a shit again? He wasn't just another one born to die. And then they bring up this whole Dominationtron and how they had to how he was a combination of Ultron and Hugo the Living Planet, right? Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and that they had to wipe out an entire planet to kill him. The Vindicators, they're really, again, because everyone in the Rick and Morty universe is a jerk, so they have to be jerks as well. And while I know some people will think, and this is clearly a stab at the no death in superhero movies thing, right? This part of the city is abandoned in Batman v Superman. And, it's not complex, but it works fine, right? I was still getting my laughs. This whole Israel thing, how whenever he gets blackout drunk, he mumbles about Israel and who knows what he's talking about, whether or not he has a point, and how everyone's awkward around it. It's funny, it works, right? We get to the next room, and they have to do basketball because drunk Rick is too drunk to create another challenge, pointing out how pointless they are. And this is clear, right? The first challenge is clearly meant to take a stab at the Vindicators. The second and third challenges are just how drunk Rick is. That he's so drunk, he's just being drunk Rick. And there's a great line about this neutrino bomb, right? Where he sets up a neutrino bomb to kill them all if they can't make 5 baskets. And Morty just goes to disarm the neutrino bomb because he's done this so many times, which is a callback to the first episode where he... Remember at the end of the first episode, or right before the credits in the first episode, where the neutrino bomb set it to go off to blow up the world? It's a little callback, but it's a nice one, right? It's always nice to see these things. And Morty's just done this, right? He even says, I've done this too many times. 40% of the time it'll probably be a dud. It's Morty doing a good job at picking apart Rick's character, right? And it works well because it comes from Morty, and Morty's clearly seen this 100 times, right? It's better characterization than the therapist gives. God damn. It doesn't surprise me that I like this episode. I've been really negative on stuff recently. I didn't like Toffee. I didn't like Pickle Rick. I don't like Lars of the Stars. I mean, that hasn't come out yet, but we'll see. But the one episode that I should have hated, nope, I actually like it. This is clearly wearing on me. But eventually, we learn, again, this is all this rushed conflict that I know the episode kind of slows down here because we focus on Supernova, Alan Rail, I think you're right, Alan Rail, and Million Ants, and we learn about their conflict, how Supernova and Alan Rail were married, and then they divorced, and now she's with Million Ants, right? And it's more complicated. Again, it's a large exposition dump, and I know for some people it won't work, and I understand, and it is really slow. But again, the point of this episode is comedy, and I think it succeeds in that. There's a lot of good jokes, so even though we get a slower moment, it still works. But Million Ants kills Alan Rails, so now then there were 3, 4-ish, right? So they go into the next room, which is they have to place the one thing Rick likes about the Vindicators on this podium, right? And I liked, even though it wasn't going to happen, I like Morty's explanation, right? How, this entire thing is pointless, right? Rick doesn't like the Vindicator, so this is all irony. I like that explanation. But of course, I would have preferred they had gone with it and the bomb just didn't work. But no. So Rick right? In one of his more emotional moments, because he even says that while he's blackout drunk, he tends to be more emotional and illogical. He becomes more human, right? It's the ironic thing about it. But he says it's probably Morty because, Morty was stealing the Vindicators' love, or the Vindicators were stealing Morty's love for Rick, right? So he was probably jealous. So Morty gets on, and they get a click, and then he gets sucked down into this chair, and I'm like, oh, I thought he was going to kill them all except for Morty, and then we get the twist, which is, I think, a lot better and a lot funnier. It reminds me of the twist in The Ricks Must Be Crazy, and that was a really good twist, and I think this is a really good twist as well. Because it's not Morty who was the solution, the machine was wired to work whoever, and it kind of has that volt. Oh god, what was the number? There was a volt, and I want to say Fallout, either New Vegas or 4, where they were told they had to kill one person a year, right? And spoilers, they learned that if they didn't do the sacrifice, they would have just been let free, right? That nobody would have died, and that's what this reminds me of. But yeah, it was Noop, right? He was the one thing Rick liked about the Vindicators. Which, yeah, it makes sense, and it's a good twist. I thought it was funny. And then as they're leaving, the platform starts to rise up as they leave. And, Supernova basically goes full villain and tries to kill Rick and Morty, right? And they get a few jabs at him. They're funny. And then she kills Millie and Ants because I don't know entirely where they're going with her, or at least where they were supposed to be. That, he was what made her human, so he had to end her. I feel like I've seen that somewheres before. But, fucking Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That is that what I'm thinking of? That it's the one thing that made her human, and now that Millie Nance is dead, she's now become the full villain, which adds another rogue to my rogues gallery for a hopeful League of Villains to fight Rick. I can hope. I don't know if it'll happen, but I can hope. And she eventually, right, they eventually rise up, and there's this big party going on, right? Supernova's able to escape, and Beth and Summer are there. And I like the little detail that Summer realizes that, he was blackout drunk, because she understands him as well, right? She sees what Rick really is. I don't think she does as much as Morty, but she sees it as well. And yeah, they got logic. There's a bunch of voice actor guest stars in this one. I think 4 or 5. Yeah, that's cool. They all do a fine job. And Gearhead shows up, which, yeah, this is, I think, the first time we've seen, or what was his name? Revolio Clockbird Jr.? I'm really bad with names, but I'm going to be annoyed if I actually remembered that. I probably didn't. It was Revolio Clockberg Jr. Of course, out of all the stupid names I remember, that has to be one, right? My god, I'm a clod. But I know some people will probably take, a party, right? It's another anticlimax, right? There's this big party. I know people will take this as a disappointment. I thought it was fine, and it gives us the line, and here, we got a shout out for the best Vindicator, Noop, and Rick's just like, who the fuck is that? Again, it's multiple layers of anticlimax stacked on top of each other, and I think it works. I really do. And then we get our end credits scene, which is just Gearhead being Gearhead, right? He pretends to be a Vindicator, and then he's a disappointment. It's not funny. Whatever. So, overall, I like this episode. I like this episode a lot. I felt like it was really funny, but it also took jabs at Rick, and they worked, unlike how I didn't think they worked in Pickle Rick, right? I just enjoyed it. And again, it could be because of my low expectations, right? Because they were pretty low. But who knows, right? It's not anything outstanding. But it was funny, and I can't fault it for being funny. And then again, humor is subjective. Whatever.
Morty, stop digging for hidden layers and just be impressed. I'm a pickle. I'm just trying to figure out why you would do this. Why anyone would do this.
Next week, we got Rick and Jerry adventure, because fuck it, why not? I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, peace.